Tigrayans continue to be targeted in Ethiopia despite the ceasefire. From Forbes, by Dr. Uelina U. Okab. In June 2023, Human Rights Watch published concerning findings of their research into the ongoing situation in Tigray, Ethiopia, suggesting that local authorities and Amhara forces have continued to forcibly expel Tigrayans as part of an ethnic cleansing campaign in Western Tigray Zone. This continues despite the truce agreement of November 2, 2022. As Human Rights Watch indicated, the Ethiopian government should suspend, investigate, and appropriately prosecute commanders and officials implicated in serious rights abuses in Western Tigray. However, the response from the Ethiopian government is not forthcoming. This campaign of ethnic cleansing dates back to November 2020. With the outbreak of the conflict in Tigray, Amhara security forces and interim authorities have been accused of targeting the Tigrayan population in Western Tigray and perpetrating war crimes and crimes against humanity against them. Despite the ceasefire, the violations continue. According to the findings of Human Rights Watch, 2 officials, called Demeke Zewdu and Belay, are said to continue to be involved in arbitrary detention, torture, and forced deportations of Tigrayans. During their interviews with witnesses and victims of abuses and aid agency staff, Human Rights Watch found that local authorities and Amhara forces held over 1,000 Tigrayans in detention in the western Tigray towns of Amhara, Royen, and Adebai on the basis of their identity before forcibly expelling Tigrayans in November 2022 or January 2023. They further added that on the evening of November 9th, Amhara forces and authorities in Western Tigray carried out the coordinated expulsion of detainees from sites around Amhara and nearby towns to central Tigray. A report prepared by aid agencies found that Fano militia transported more than 2,800 men, women, and children from 5 detention sites in Western Tigray on November 10th. This was further reported on by Reuters. Several former detainees said that subsequently, in January 2023, at least 70 people, including residents and detainees, were forcibly expelled from Western Tigray. The situation did not improve over the next months. In March 2023, militias in Western Tigray are said to have continued to threaten and harass Tigrayan civilians. A woman from Adebai testified that they came into my home and said I need to leave because it's not our land. They would knock at midnight and say Tigrayans can't come back. In April, interim authorities were said to be bringing in and settling communities from the Amhara region in the Tigrayans' towns, making it harder for Tigrayans to return. Human Rights Watch shared its findings with the Ethiopian government but received no response. Human Rights Watch classified the atrocities as ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing, which is not formally defined under international law, is defined by United Nations Commission of Experts for the former Yugoslavia as a purposeful policy designed by one ethnic or religious group to remove by violent and terror-inspiring means the civilian population of another ethnic or religious group from certain geographic areas. However, the same acts can be classified as international crimes such as crimes against humanity and even genocide. Because of the specific targeting of Tigrayans in Ethiopia during the 2-year-long conflict, but also since the ceasefire, in June 2023, parliamentarians in the UK launched an inquiry into the situation of the community, the Tigray Inquiry. The Tigray Inquiry is led by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on International Law, Justice and Accountability, chaired by Brendan O'Hara MP, Lord Alton of Liverpool and Baroness Kennedy KC, and conducted with the assistance of the International Bar Association's Human Rights Institute. The inquiry is to consider the situation and make preliminary findings and recommendations for the UK government.
The inquiry aims to shed light on the situation of the Tigrayans and the issue of impunity for international crimes in Ethiopia, especially as the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia may cease to exist over the next months. And so will the international attention on the situation. The ongoing atrocities against the Tigrayans will only intensify once this happens.
Rosemary.
But what it's meant is that the Tigray people say that they have been targeted based on the ethnic distinction on their ID cards. So people are telling us that they're being pulled over, at best jailed and detained, and at worst being forced to flee into Sudan. Prime Minister Ahmed says that not a single civilian was injured in all of this, in all of these weeks of fighting. And what we're hearing from our team that's down on that Sudanese-Ethiopian border is that that's just not true. We have images of civilians who are injured, who've been hit by bullets. One lady told us that she had to flee her home and was forced to give birth on the route, that they weren't allowed to cross over into Sudan through the direct routes by the Ethiopian army. So on the back routes that took her days to do a trip that should have taken hours, she eventually gave birth. And she was met at the border by our teams and by the doctors. Fortunately, wonderfully, her child survived, and so did she. But that's just one story. And one of the only stories we're able to hear, because Abiy Ahmed has instated a complete communications blackout. So it's very hard to find out what's actually going on inside Tigray.
And meanwhile, Abiy Ahmed, of course, was just awarded the Nobel Peace Prize less than a year ago.
For finally signing a peace treaty with Eritrea. And the irony is that as he signed that peace treaty, it allowed both him and Eritrea to unite against the common foe, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. So in hindsight, for him to have won a Nobel Peace Prize for something that has enabled him to wage a war on an entire region on 6 million people is just, it's appalling. It's appalling to think about.